I am an overthinker, and I know I am not the only one. It is so easy to get overwhelmed, fall into this pit or a cycle, rabbit hole, whatever you want to call it, and then not actually get anything done. As a crocheter, I want to do things, like I want to crochet. So it's very frustrating when I get in my own way, just getting totally overwhelmed by all the details. I'm like 99% sure I am not the only one who does this. So let's talk about a few of the things I'm doing to really stop myself from overthinking. As far as crochet is concerned, I still need a ton of work in other areas. And hopefully that'll give you some ideas of where you can start if you find yourself like just getting caught on like that hamster wheel of indecision and not being able to start a project. I've really broken this down into a few different steps, and it does require a little bit of planning and thinking on the front end of things, but I feel like that's the problem. Sometimes I want to just jump in, and then it is easy to get on YouTube or Etsy or Pinterest or whatever and just scroll and scroll and scroll, waiting for some inspiration to jump in. So, that deals with what type of project, what color, what yarn, what pattern, all of that. And then it's like, you can waste hours and get literally nothing done and not be further ahead. You could distract yourself with something different and not actually do number one. I didn't mean that. And not actually do the first thing that you started out to do. And it can lead to a lot of wasted money, not just time. If you're purchasing patterns or purchasing yarn and still not really having the right direction, I have been there and I have wasted money. So instead of coming in on the back end and being distracted and overwhelmed by the millions of combinations of yarn, colors, patterns, projects, etc., we're going to attack it from the front end and decide to start out with what type of colors we like working with the best. And I know that sounds oversimplified, but maybe just to an overthinker. Maybe everybody else who isn't an overthinker just already knows what colors they want to work with. But believe me, if you're an overthinker, you can find a million different reasons to talk yourself in and out of things and then in and out of it again. But I've been working so hard at only bringing yarns into my home that are in the color palette that I love. I know it helps that I really like more of those fall autumnal colors, and I'm not distracted by a million colors out there. So that may be harder if that is you. Although someone did just tell me that they do get really distracted by liking all the different colors, so they realized that probably rainbow was their favorite. So just a side note, totally irrelevant to this video, if you are a person who can't narrow down your colors, maybe it's rainbow. Something to think about. Now, if you are a person who has a yarn stash in their home and has stuff in there that really doesn't align with it, I am right there with you. I have done a few things in other videos. I have talked about it where I have gifted some of my yarn that I knew I would never use to some beginner crocheters that were just learning, some teenagers. You can get rid of yarn, but I'm not telling you to. What I want you to do is gather all of the yarns that you absolutely love the color of and either group them together on your shelf, put them in a bin. You'll see I have my used first bin. Do something to gather all those favorite ones together. If you are a person who shops for the project, then this is perfect for you because you can put pictures on your phone of yarn colors you love. You can print it out. You can, if you have little scraps of yarn, you can take the little scraps and tape them to a piece of paper so you have that paper to take with you into the yarn store. There are a ton of things you can do to keep that color scheme in mind, but I would encourage you to have something, whether it's digital or physical, with you when you go to the yarn store, or if you're shopping online, and have that there as a reminder so that you don't get distracted. That narrows down so much indecision right there. And it doesn't necessarily knock out other projects from the running because you can easily substitute your colors for someone else's colors in the project. You don't have to use the same one. Because I have heard people say, like they find a project and they want to work on that, and they're like, oh, but I don't have these 3 yarns that they used to do it. And then they go out and buy those yarns, and then maybe they don't like them or whatever. Yeah, you don't have to do that. You can use your yarns and figure out what's compatible based on the colors you like to do that project. The next thing you're going to want to figure out is the types of yarn you like to work with. And that's going to be size, and it's going to be fiber. So that can actually narrow down your selection of what projects you want to do and limit your overthinking because the pool you have to choose from is going to be smaller. If you only like natural fibers, then that is probably going to eliminate a lot of projects out there that are made out of acrylics and synthetic yarns. Just based on the fact that if this is a project that especially is a wearable, you need a certain amount of stretchiness or not stretchiness, and that does not always translate well. I always, when substituting yarns, try to get as close to the fiber construction as possible to the original pattern, so that it does tend to lay and drape and stretch the way that the pattern designer intended it to. So that is a huge help in overthinking right there, is just knowing what fibers you want to work with. Personally, I love natural and synthetic fibers. I think that there is a time and a place for most things. And while I definitely have favorites and I have been gravitating to like smaller weight yarns and wools, it doesn't mean that I don't still enjoy some of my acrylics for certain type of projects. I've actually got a couple super cool projects coming out. The very next video I promise you will see will be one made out of acrylic yarn. And it's fun. I am excited about it. I don't want to give too, well, I guess I did give the colors away already in my last video, but it reminds me of jam and honey. I absolutely love tweeds, so this was 100% in my wheelhouse. And when it all came together, I was like, yes, boom, I didn't have to think about anything. And I loved that. Okay, back on track. Figure out the size and the fibers you like to work with, and that can develop over time, and it will probably change and evolve over time as well, and there is absolutely nothing wrong with that. But if you know you're in a place right now where maybe it is your budget, which is a very real thing, say maybe, like I'm on acrylic yarn budget right now, that's the kind of patterns you're going to want to gravitate to. So say you were like, okay, I need to stick with acrylics, I need to keep my budget intact this month, and I need to work with acrylic yarns, and I love plum colored yarns. You've already got 2 steps done in figuring out what to make and not being overwhelmed in the process. Okay, so this next one is important, and for an overthinker, it sounds oversimplified, but I'm going to throw it out there. Figure out what type of projects that you like to make. While I was learning to crochet, those first several years, I was just making all sorts of stuff, and I found a lot of it I didn't have a purpose for, I didn't know what to do with, etc. So it was good in the aspect of I was learning, and I was also learning what I did and did not have a use for, and what I did and did not like. I have attempted amigurumi a few times, and I know for me, I just don't like to make it. It's not my thing. I love looking at them, and I think they are amazing and cute and adorable, and I love them to look at on Instagram. But for me, I don't like making them, and I really just don't have a use for them. They would end up just going in a box or on a shelf and not really ever getting looked at or appreciated. But I do wear a lot of crochet. I enjoy wearing it. I have really been enjoying the process of making a wardrobe that really speaks to me. And I am also very, very budget minded, and I don't like shopping. I don't like trying on clothes. And so for me, crocheting a lot of these pieces is like the perfect way for me to be able to totally customize my clothes. I do work outside of the home, and I do need to look fairly respectable. 4 to 5 days a week. So that is something that is important to me, and I know that that's going to get the most used for me. And to narrow it down a little bit further, I think it is very important as you get a little further into your crochet journey. Like if you already know you love making wearables, then that next step would be going through your closet, going through your clothes, and figuring out what's missing. That's been a huge inspiration for me right there, because it is easy to think, oh, I loved making this vest. I could make more vests. Okay, but am I really going to wear all those vests? Do I need them? There can be too much of a good thing. I may not need another vest, but I might need 2 belts. That is a great place to narrow your project down even further. I did a video on it, and I will link that up here for you. This next step was so important to me. I feel like I sometimes struggle with different people's explanations and instructions, and that's just been kind of a lifelong thing for me. I just don't always get it. And it could be about anything, trust me, but I just don't always get it. The thing about that is that I have struggled at times with verbal instructions. I've struggled with written instructions. Like, that's why YouTube has been so helpful for me. When I very first learned to crochet, I enlisted the help of a friend, and she sat there with me and had to literally show me side by side and tell me what to do. And at that point I needed her feedback to tell me what to do different, what I was doing incorrectly, etc. But after I got those basic things mastered, I found that YouTube tutorials was the best for me because I had the visual and the auditory. So some people might thrive on written patterns and get distracted by somebody's voice, or distracted, by the way they're doing things, or they just need a written. Or some people get so distracted and overwhelmed by a written pattern, they need the auditory. The point of all that rambling is that figure out what works the best for you as far as what type of tutorial and what type of pattern you need, because right there that will eliminate a ton of choices out there. If I'm not gonna go to Etsy in the beginning and start searching for patterns. My first thing is I'm gonna go on YouTube and look for, if it's me personally we're talking about, I'm going to go to YouTube. I am going to look at wearable patterns. I am going to look and see what I need to make. Say it's a belt. I'm going to look at crochet belt pattern. That won't matter the color. That will probably matter the fiber. And I'm going to go from there. And if I find it, or if I find a couple, I'm also going to look probably and see if they do have a blog that has the pattern on it, or if they are selling the pattern somewhere. But I'm not just going to start with a written. I am going to start with a video tutorial. It just helps to have someone who can communicate in a style that you understand. There are some very talented crochet tutorial makers, but sometimes the way people say things, it's just sometimes hard to register. And I think that's where some of the overthinking comes into play again. I'm like, well, did they mean this or did they mean that? What did they mean by this? And then, they're talking and I'm thinking, and then I got to go back. Where some designers can just speak in a way that is easier for you to process. And that's not saying one's good and one's bad. It's just such an individual need that you really do need to look and see who delivers the information in a way that's easiest for you to understand. I had tried so many times to do a magic ring, and this has been quite a few years ago, but I had tried so many times to do a magic ring and I could not get it. And they were like, wrap here and wrap there and do this and take it under here. And it was just, my brain was not processing that. I had my friend try to show me and I was just not getting it. And it seemed like such an overcomplicated way to do it. And I didn't understand why, and I was trying to figure out why. And then I was watching a video she does crafting but has some crochet on there. The channel is called This Southern Girl Can. and she was making a magic ring, and she's like, yeah, it's a slip knot that you don't finish, and then you just start chaining. Like, mind blown for me. Like, that worked for me. And now I always, like, I go to that magic ring instead of doing like the chain 4, just because I like it. And that was the way it was explained to me that I understood it, and it just made sense. So just an example of finding someone who can communicate in a way that you understand. What I have found, and I think that as crocheters or knitters, you know, we all have certain things that we find ourselves enjoying doing more and seem to develop like certain styles. I think a couple good examples of this that I'm going to use is MJ's Off the Hook, where a lot of her patterns I have noticed, you know, she's got like a granny pullover, a granny stitch pullover, and all these with these like cute V-necks, and like there's just a certain style with them. If you check out her channel, I'll link it below, you know, you'll see like, yeah, there is definitely a style to these pullovers she's making. If you look at Craftin' a Cuppa, hers are very like blocky and square, and like cropped blocky and square. And it's like a certain style. And both of those designers have like several variations of both of those things. So if you are a person that one particular style happens to look great on, I think it's a perfect opportunity for you to like kind of hone in on that particular designer and really dive deep into that designer's patterns, because they have so many and they gravitate to making ones that are somewhat similar. Your chances of success and having it work for you are just going to be amplified if you find that designer where you understand how they explain things and they make a lot of the things that look good on you and feel good to wear. That is probably even more important than the looks, in my book anyway. And then the very last thing I want to suggest to avoid overwhelm and to stop overthinking is just have your supplies ready for you. I love to have little Notion bags all over the place. I couldn't even tell you how many I have. I have multiple whip bags at all times, and I have Notion pouches in them. I have extra Notion pouches. I keep scissors. I keep yarn needles. I keep tape measures. You know, those things are all pretty inexpensive, and it is okay to buy multiples of them. There is literally no reason that you need to think that you only need one pair of scissors. I have gotten a lot of my supplies at the Dollar Tree as far as the pouches, the scissors. I don't think I've ever gotten any measuring tapes there, but a lot of times you can find those for like around $1. And then yarn needles, if you go to Walmart, you can get a pack of like metal, is it Susan Bates ones for about $2. Spend the $2, spend $6, spend $8, and just buy like 4 of those little clamshells and put them in your different bags. It is a convenience. And while it doesn't necessarily keep you from overthinking, I have found anyway that by having those things readily available, and I don't have to devote my brain power to where did I last have this? What project bag was it in? Did I leave it upstairs? Did I lose it? You know, like I don't have to think about all those things. I just know I'm going to go to whatever bag I have and I'm going to have those things I need in there. And then it's like it frees up my mind to work on the project, and I have more brain power to devote to that instead of those little details that really aren't that important. I discovered this about myself a few years ago. Like, there is a thing called decision fatigue, and I definitely get it. The later on in the day and the more decisions I have to make, I lose a lot of the ability to make decisions. So things I have been doing, not in my crochet life, but in the rest of my life that have helped is I prep my coffee pot at night so that when I get up in the morning to get ready for work, all I have to do is push the button. I don't have to think about the other stuff. I don't have to think, did I run out of coffee and have to go grab some in the pantry? You know, how many scoops, how much water? Like, I don't have to worry about any of that. I just hit the button and then start getting ready. I set out my clothes the night before and have them downstairs in the bathroom or near the bathroom so that on my way down I can grab them and go in there and get ready. Those little things help me make better decisions in the rest of my day because I am devoting zero brain power to them. And that's the same technique I'm using on my Notion pouches. You know, have I spent $20 or $25 on multiple supplies? Yes. Do I think it's worth it? Yes. Just because it's that much easier for me. Wish me luck as I try to apply a lot of these overthinking rules to other aspects in my life. It's definitely not something that I know I'm going to be able to break free of easily. It takes work. It probably will be a lifetime of work to be able to kind of rein some of that in. But if I can successfully start that here, in my hobby that I absolutely love, I consider that a success. And I wish you just as much success in your endeavor to really stop overthinking and get more crochet done and enjoy the process. I look forward to talking about yarn again with you soon. Bye.